Hello. Before we begin this episode, I'd like to note that it contains discussions of miscarriage and loss. So if you think it's going to be difficult to listen to, please choose another episode. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. Today's guest is a gold-winning Olympian, and she is also the Olympic swimming pundit about to head off to Paris. She's also a mother. It's Becky Adlington. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. I mean, it's very hot outside, but here we are, stuck in a nice, cool studio.
I'm happy about that.
Are you?
Yeah. I just get too hot. I'm like, I get too flustered, so now I'm happy to be inside. I'm too pale.
I can't do it out there.
I just burn.
How are you feeling? Because obviously Paris is around the corner now.
Oh, so excited. So excited. I think last time for Tokyo, I found the last Olympics, I love every Olympics, don't get me wrong, but the last one was quite tough because firstly, I had a 6-month-old baby. I was breastfeeding, trying to get a nap in, whatever. The swimming was on at 2 a.m. I just felt in a blur because I didn't sleep. I was just in this chaos, and we were doing it all from studio. There was no crowds there. Of course. It was just kind of COVID, and it was just kind of a bit lifeless, and I felt really sorry for the athletes. Whereas this time I'm like, I know it's not in this country, but I kind of feel like we're stealing it a little bit.
Yeah, I reckon so. It's so close. Do you remember watching the Olympics growing up? Was it at any point something that really influenced you? Like do you remember it as a young age?
Not like super, super young. Like the first one I remember was when I was about 4. How old would I have been? 14, 15.
Right.
When it was Athens. And that was kind of like the first one that I was like glued to the telly. We were on holiday at the time, and we had back in the day, the tellies were like tiny in your hotel room, like this little and massive box, but like tiny little telly that'd be like flicking through the the channels to try and find anything. It was never in English, but I just didn't care. It was just one of those that was the first one that I really, really remember. And really got invested in, and really was like, wow, this looks amazing.
Yeah. Well, when did you actually start swimming?
When I joined a club when I was about 8 or 9.
Right.
And started competing from 10, 11 years of age. But at that age, you don't really associate it with the Olympics.
Yeah.
I think you just do it because it's your hobby and like that you just love it. You don't do it at 10, 11, 12 thinking that you're going to go to the Olympics. Yeah. Parents might think, oh, they're good, but you don't as an athlete. So, and certainly being from Mansfield, being from such a small town, like no one ever expected anyone to go to the Olympics. So then it was fine. It totally took all that away, and it was just that enjoyment factor.
Well, what does it look like to compete as a child at that age? Were you having to dedicate a lot of like weekdays, like early mornings and evenings to training?
Oh, absolutely. Literally from the age of like 11, you're kind of going after school. I started going in the mornings. It's really hard for families as well, because obviously you're relying on your parents to take you and things like that. When I was 12, we decided to move to kind of where we lived was such a small town that the coach was like, I think Becky needs a little bit more progression compared to the pool time that we've got here, and kind of so we moved to a club in Nottingham, so it was kind of a 45-minute drive to the pool and back, and it was one of those, it was spending 3 hours in the car every day, because morning and back to go back to school, then again after school back there and back. So it was just like a lot of travelling for the family and everything else, and it was just something that you have to dedicate weekends to. It is a lot of dedication.
Do you have siblings?
Yeah, 2.
Younger or older?
Older. Both of them swam. It was quite a good family scenario because both of them swam. They kind of stopped when we have a huge drop-off rate in swimming around 16, so they both stopped around that age.
Why do you reckon that is?
Oh, just exams, school. It's kind of hard getting up at 5 a.m. when you're heavy. The demand from the school life is just so huge. Like you don't even have enough hours to do your homework anyway, let alone then trying to add on any sport, skill, drama, music, adding anything into that equation's really, really difficult. So
do your mum and dad swim?
No. My mum actually said to me, bless her, so recently she had a heart attack a couple of months ago, bless her, and she's like just taking it steady, and she's allowed to get back in the water soon. Right. And it was one of those, she has always swam, but it's one of those that she's always just swam, I call it granny breaststroke, where you like swim with your head up like this. Bless her. And she said to me, because we're going on holiday at the end of the summer with my mum and dad, and she said, do you mind teaching me front crawl? I was like, of course not. I was like, it would be a privilege to teach you how to do front crawl, Mum. I'm like, she knows what she's doing. She's watched me for years and years and years. I mean, she knows the basics, but swimming's one of those sports that what you think you're doing is completely different to what it actually looks like.
Really?
Totally different. Like when you say to people, do you know you're doing this? And they're like, no. It's because the feel of the water is so different. So I said that I'd spend some time with her and teaching her front crawl. So that'd be really sweet.
I love this. It must be a lovely way to sort of bookend your day, to start with a swim and end with a swim as well. Like mentally, that's got to be a really great thing to do.
I find swimming is just, I swim now, and I swim it purely for my mental health.
Yeah.
Like I don't go for physical health. I don't go fast. I literally do it because it's the only time I get to turn my phone off. My phone's not attached to me. I think if you went out for a walk or a run, you take your phone for safety, but it's one of those in a pool, you just switch off. Nobody's talking at you. You're not got noise. You haven't got the doorbell ringing or someone going, Mama, or anything like that. You can just literally let your brain just wander and it just flows and it's lovely.
I mean, I wonder how many people have got in the pool alongside you and secretly tried to race you.
Oh, no, they don't. Honestly, I don't.
Even though you're just like leisurely taking your time. Come on, Becky. Here's my granny crawl. Come on.
Honestly, everyone knows me at that leisure centre now. I mean, I go the same time every single week. I've been going for like a year and a half or whatever. And everyone's just like, hiya. And I just pay for my swim, go in and crack on and then leave. And it's fine. It's great.
So outside of swimming, what was your childhood like?
Oh, just fun. Like, I think growing up, there was 3 of us, so 3 girls, a little bit intense at times as well, don't get me wrong. It was a lot of like sibling rivalries, and I think all being girls, like me and my sister shared a room, so it was very intense, like stealing each other's clothes and just a bit like, because we're only 2 years apart to my next sister, then there's 5 years between me and my eldest.
Right.
But it was just one of those that, we were just very close-knit. I mean, my mum used to dress us all in the same outfits. And I'm like, oh, God, Mum, why did you do that? It was all that. All had the same bowl haircut with like a fringe and like a... But it was great. Holidays, it was just fun. It was just, it was great. I can't complain at all.
Yeah. And did you ever look to the future and think of yourself starting your own family?
I didn't. And I think it was one of those because I never thought to myself I wouldn't have kids, but I never thought to myself, oh, I'm going to have kids. Yeah. And I think because I was so focused on swimming, it didn't even enter my realm of possibility because I was just so focused on performance. I think that's the thing as an athlete. You are very selfish. You have to be.
So was it only once you'd stopped competing that you started to allow yourself to think about motherhood?
Yeah, it was one of those. I always knew I wanted to have kids. I've always wanted to have like a really big family and have everything else. But it was one of those that it was kind of like, oh, okay, I can at least entertain it now because my body isn't there to perform and to kind of do this intense exercise every single day and slog up and down in a pool. So it's kind of that first opportunity where I really got to kind of like think, oh, when would I like to be a mom? And it was just kind of like one of those, you can't ever plan. I think it was just one of those that it's just like, you've just got to go for it. And if it happens, it happens. Because it's one of the, I've never found it easy to get pregnant. So you've just kind of got to go into it and hope that it happens. It's also, we are a little bit of control freaks, I think. As well, and this is so out of your control, and I think it's one of those that you don't know what's going on, so it's just so difficult because you want it to happen then and there and it just doesn't, and you get very impatient as an athlete. But it's also one of those that it's kind of like you want to enjoy the process. I've never been like someone that's like kind of just been a bit too intense with it because I kind of think, well, this is the fun bit, right? The trying bit's the fun bit. That's the bit you should be enjoying.
So how long did it take you to fall pregnant the first time round?
I can't even remember how long, because it was one of those that I remember I was going through so many tests. So I've got polycystic ovaries. So I was having loads of tests done at the time because of my hormones and everything else. And I remember that it had been a couple of months. I'd had the scan, they had confirmed I had it, etc., all of that sort of stuff. And then we came back off holiday and I had a blood test done and I didn't even entertain it. And then it was the doctor that phoned me and was like, oh, you're pregnant. I was like, oh, I was like, that's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it was a complete surprise because I'd just been having so many of these tests done and everything else. So it was one of those that it was definitely, I would have said probably 6 months. It wasn't like years and years and years. So it was one of those that kind of like was perfect because we were
imagine being told on the phone, and by the way, you are pregnant.
I know. It was just kind of like, I remember just being like, oh my God, this is amazing. So yeah. But also one of those that you're a bit like, oh, okay, well, how long and what happens now? And you just kind of, you want everything then to happen, don't you? When's the scan and when's this? And you have to wait ages. So it's just like, yeah, it just is a very unique process, isn't it?
Yeah. How did you feel during that pregnancy?
With Summer, good. I think that one was the one that was kind of like, it was so unknown.
Yeah.
Like you have no idea how you're going to feel the first time. So every little thing was kind of, is that normal? Is that this?
Yeah.
Is that whatever? But I didn't feel sick. I didn't have morning sickness. Everyone kept going to me, you'll be fine. You're an Olympian, so birth will be a doddle. It was not a doddle.
Because of breathing.
Yeah, but I was just like, are you kidding me? It was like, what difference does that make that I've competed in swimming? How does that make me fine at giving birth? They're very different.
I mean, that must have felt like a bit of a pressure as well, just having people go, you don't even need to know what I'm going to tell you. You've got it.
I know, and everyone was like, yeah, you'll be fine. Yours will be over dead quick. She's so fit and all this. I was like, that's not what's happened at all.
Well, how did you feel going into it?
I was terrified of the birth bit. Absolutely terrified.
And how did things start off?
Just, again, it was just one of those that was like, I think I'm in labour. And it was like, you never really know. We went to hospital. They were like, no, you're only 2 centimetres. Go back home. I was like, oh, okay. I thought that was going to be my level of pain because that was so painful. And I was like, I thought that was it. And then I was like, ooh, okay, there's a lot more to come. A lot more to come, which I didn't expect. And yeah, went back in the middle of the night. Literally had to get out of the water, had to do everything else. The umbilical cord got wrapped around her leg, so she kept like bungeeing back in. She was just like, no, every time I pushed, she was like, it pulled her back up. I was like, gosh, this is not working. So yeah, but managed to get her out safely and everything in the end. And then I was just like, thank God that's over.
How was your recovery?
Yeah, it was actually okay. It wasn't too bad at all.
Yeah.
It was kind of one of those that I just took it a day at a time and just kind of was just a bit easier on myself, to be honest. I've probably been harder on myself since that. I was probably the easiest with my first because I had nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
Whereas each pregnancy after, I've become really, really hard on myself compared
Really?
to. Yeah, and I think it's got worse rather than got better. You'd think it would be the other way around.
Yeah. You think you'd know to just kind of like, give yourself time to, recover and
But then,
just be.
But I think it's that expectation. I think my body bounced back a little bit quicker with the first. Naturally, I was younger. Like it was a bit more like I had a bit more stretchiness in me, so it did bounce back. Whereas the second one, I was like, I don't understand why this is still here, and it just it never goes.
Yeah, well, that dough of when they're first out it's a very odd feeling to have your body do something that's so alien to you, having lived in it your whole life.
Exactly. And it's just, I think with being older and it's just kind of so much harder and the stretch marks and all that sort of stuff, whereas kind of my stretch marks kind of ease very quickly after something, whereas since then it's just not. Like my stretch marks, they're now permanent. Like my stretch marks are not going anywhere, and like this pouch just does not shift no matter what I do. I could eat 100 calories a day and this would still be here, I swear.
Just got to embrace it.
Exactly. So I think that's why I'm hard on myself, because I had that expectation of the first time round it being not easy, don't get me wrong, but it was definitely easier than the others.
What was motherhood like then with did you feel like you were able to enjoy it?
Yes. I think it was hard because at the time, me and Summer's dad were separated. Mm-hmm. So it was really, really tricky to manage. Okay, we're getting a divorce and we've got this tiny little baby. And that is hard because normally when you have, I can only speak from experience of when I've had my second child, but as in, you've got that support there, that help, and you've got so much love. And of course we had that for Summer. Yeah. Absolutely we did. We've always put Summer first in that aspect. But it's hard because you're going through something so heartbreaking and so devastating that it's just so emotional, as well as your hormones are rife anyway after a pregnancy. So it was just one of those real hard.
And it not looking quite how you would have thought it was
Exactly.
going to look.
Exactly. You never go into any marriage or any having a child together thinking it's going to end with being separated.
Yeah.
So that's a really hard mentality to even get your head around, going, this is not what either of us signed up for. We signed up to be a family, and we are a family in many, many ways. But that was a real difficulty challenge. But being a mum, that side of it, I can't believe just how much I loved. Like, I instantly changed. So many people said to me before, you're going to be bad cop, Beck. And like, because I am a very direct kind of personality. I'm very black and white, etc. And everyone, I think from my swimming days, everyone was like, yeah, you're going to be bad cop and like tell the kids off and all this. And then I was instantly like softened. It instantly brought this maternal side out of me, which I'd never really known before.
Yeah.
And it completely changed who I was. It changed priorities. Of course it does. It changes your world. But I didn't expect it to change me as a person as much as it did. And that really shocked me. I thought I would like obviously love it, but I didn't expect the full shift in my personality. That I was like, oh, I'm totally different now. So that's baffling.
And liking that difference as well.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, I loved it. Made me a better person. And it definitely made me a softer person and kind of everything. It wasn't a bad thing that it changed.
Yeah.
It just surprises you how much it changes you.
Yeah.
Well, it did me.
How was that first chunk of time, of doing it on your own?
In some ways, it was incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
Anyone being a single parent, it is rough.
Yeah.
But at the same time, me and Summer just had this amazing bond, and we still do, but it was just like me and her, and it was just like, not that we were against the world, but it was just like, there's my little partner in crime. And we were so close because we would spend so much time together, and it was just that closeness and that bond that's connected us for life. Even though kind of Andy, my now husband, she was 2 when we got together, but didn't really get introduced until she was about 3. We were quite mindful of that. So it was probably first 3 years where it was just like me and her. And it was and it was such a lovely little bond. And it was tough, don't get me wrong, really tough and really lonely and isolating, because normally when you have your partner, you get to put the kids down and then you get to have a chat. And whereas I just would come downstairs and be like,
How was it meeting Andy?
Amazing. It was one of those. We actually met on a dating app. So
Did you?
Yeah. We actually met on Bumble, which everyone is like, you went on Bumble? I was like, yeah. Andy was my first ever date on Bumble as well. And it was literally like, I had really hard rules around online dating.
Okay.
I was like, no. And that's why I joined Bumble, so I could talk first and all this sort of stuff. We had to speak for like 2 weeks. Otherwise it was just like, no, I'm not giving you even my number or anything like that. So I was quite strict with it, but only because I'd heard some horror stories from my friends that I was like, ooh. And I had Summer in this equation as well. I think when you've got a child, I was so mindful about that whole side of things as well. And then I went on this date with this guy from Liverpool that I was just like, he's really nice and he's just really sweet and he's just really great company.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those that it didn't even faze him that I had a child.
Did you say that before you even met as well?
Yeah, he knew I had a child.
Yeah.
I think I even had it in my bio as I put mum. Like, I wanted to be so upfront about that.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those that my child comes first. Like, I will not message you back because I'm with my child, or I'm not going to come over and see you because I'm with my. Like, they had to understand that was my top priority. They were always going to be second best.
Yeah.
And Andy was absolutely fine with it, and that's what was so lovely, because we took our time with introducing him to Summer and things like that. And I wanted them over time to be able to create their own little bond and their own little thing, rather than me forcing anything or kind of anything like that. And Summer hadn't really been exposed to anybody before, so it was just kind of like we were just trying to be really respectful and mindful of the situation.
Did that feel like a real moment when they did meet?
It was one of those that by the time that he did fully meet her, I knew I was already in love with this man. Like, and I waited for that moment. It wasn't going to be somebody that I wasn't sure about. And I was like, I love this man and I want him to be in her lives because he's positively affected mine, and I think he'll positively affect hers as well.
How did it feel though when they did start having moments together?
Really, really sweet. I think it was so nice for me because obviously when she saw her dad, I don't see that bit.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that first experience. I parent very, very differently. I really struggle with the childish side of me.
Yeah.
I really struggle with that. Like, I can play a board game, I can play an like a thing.
Something with rules and control, Becky.
Yeah. Like I can play if it's like an actual, like a train set or things like that. When it's really imaginative and really creative or just like anything else, I really struggle. I'm not a creative person. So I struggle to come up with it. And she's like, Mummy, make up a story. And I'm like, once upon a time there was a girl. Like I'm so terrible at being creative. And it was just kind of like, it was so nice to see her have this really playful side. Like, Andy is brilliant at making up games and doing fun things and like doing all this creative stuff that I'm like, it was amazing to see that. And I was like, actually, I totally now get parents, as in joint parents, why it works so well, because they each offer something so unique. And I was just so glad. And don't get me wrong, I know she gets that with her dad, but I hadn't witnessed that.
Yeah.
So it was nice to fully witness that when I was around.
Well, nice for her to have that wherever she is.
Exactly. What I also liked is Andy didn't ever mind like telling her off if she did something naughty. And I kind of liked that. I was like, you know what? That gives me more confidence that I'm fine if I ever had to leave you guys alone, because you're not going to just like let her walk all over you. You're going to tell her if she's naughty or she's doing something wrong, and you're going to look out for her safety. And straight away they had that thing where like I knew he would do absolutely anything for her. I knew he would die for her. And I'm like, you just need that trust as a mum. Like, there's only a few people I would trust with my kids. And it was kind of one of those that I had to have that trust there.
Well, being a step parent is such a massive thing. It's such a massive honour. But you know, to have someone who's really going to step into that role and fulfill it in a really meaningful way, that's massive.
It's huge. And I always like to say, like, I've said this to Andy on Summer before, like, I like to think of it as like a bonus dad rather than a stepdad.
Yeah.
Like, because it's one of those that Summer's so lucky. She gets, like, obviously her dad is her dad, but she gets this second influence in her life of love and support and somebody that's going to help guide her and shape her, and it is that bonus factor. And I'm in the mindset, and I know Summer's dad is exactly the same. The more people that love our child, the better. Like, and the more people that will support them, the better. Like, we want that love and abundance of support there for her. So it's been a joy to watch.
Did you and Andy talk early on about more children being in the picture?
I always wanted like a massive family. I always wanted loads of kids. So it was one of those that for me, it was an absolute no-brainer. We definitely were like, oh, let's wait and let's be a little bit older. Let's try and like just, I think obviously COVID hit, but we kind of, Andy was quite traditional. He wanted to get married first and do all of that, which is absolutely fine. Whereas I wasn't really bothered about getting married again. Like for me, it was like, once you've been married, I think it changes your perception. You're a bit like, oh, I could just easily just do this on a beach and just have me and you and just do it in a completely different way. But it was one of those, we did always want to have kids. It was just kind of like, just not straight away.
Yeah. And how did it feel when you decided that actually the time's right to start trying?
Again, I was having so many different... I ended up having like different operations and things like that. And I was going through this period of time where I was just trying to get to grips with everything medical and how to ease my symptoms and how to manage everything. And it was kind of one of those that obviously COVID happened and then you were bored and you had nothing to do. And it was like, it just naturally happened because we weren't careful. We weren't careful for a very, very long time, like years. And it was just one of those that we were both a bit very chilled about it.
And also, I guess if you're so secure in your relationship and you know you want it at some point.
It kind of was a bit of, like, I was very honest with Andy. He knew all my challenges from a fertility aspect. And it was kind of one of those that were like, we knew it wasn't going to be a case of, okay, let's get pregnant straight away, which is why we took the approach, okay, let's just see how it is and just be really natural about it. So obviously it did take a long time in our world, but it was one of those that, again, we didn't want to pressurize it and make it an intense thing. And I didn't want to do all the, I've got to check my ovulation dates and I've got to do all of this, because we wanted it to be a bit more relaxed. And COVID gave us that. We were relaxed. We weren't stressed because we were working, and it was kind of just one of those things that then obviously I fell pregnant and we just couldn't believe it. We're like, oh my God, we've got a lockdown, baby.
Well, how did that pregnancy feel different to Summer's?
It was so different because I was at home.
Yeah.
Like it was in lockdown. So it was like I was more chilled. I could take a nap. Like obviously Summer was there, but Summer was still having a nap every now and again, going to bed early, things like that. And it was so much easier. Could go on a nice gentle walk. It was actually nice in that aspect.
Yeah.
But then there was the terrifying side of going, Andy can't come to the appointments with me. Is Andy going to be allowed at the birth? Kind of really that side of it I found really, really different. It was kind of like there was this nice side, but then this really horrible side, because I felt really bad that Andy didn't get to experience these things.
Yeah.
Like he is the father of my child. Why is it just me that is there? Like this, he should be witnessing this. And we actually went and paid for a private scan halfway through, because I was so devastated, because they were allowing the man to be there for the private ones, but not for the NHS. So I actually got to the point where I was like, this is so unfair for him that he's not experiencing it, because I knew what he was missing out on. He didn't know because he wasn't there with Summer, but I knew, and I just felt like they were taking that away from him, and I hated it. So we went and got a scan just so he could, and we found out it was a boy, and he was then just like a little kid in a sweet shop. He was like, I'm having a boy. I mean, he wasn't bothered, but every time we asked Summer, oh, would you like a brother or a sister? She was like, oh, I don't really mind. So she was just like, she was just so excited. And honestly, she was instantly so in love with him. And she was just born to be a big sister. So it's so lovely that she got that as well. We felt like that was just really a lovely moment as well.
How did it feel heading towards the birth with everything COVID-wise happening, where we really weren't sure what Andy was going to be able to do? Everything was changing constantly around that time. So it must have added a layer of anxiety.
Oh, I was so stressed. I was like so anxious about the birth because I wanted Andy there. Yeah. I was like, I do not want to do this alone. That's his child. I need that support more than anything else. I need that support there. I left it probably a little bit too late to go to the hospital.
Really?
Because I was so nervous, because everything was like, your partner has to stay in the downstairs in the reception or in the car, and you go in, they assess you, and then if you're near the time, they then bring your partner up. And I didn't want to have to leave Andy for that long, so I kind of left it to the very, very last minute, and I went in and I was like, they were like, oh, you're 8 centimetres, you need your husband now. Because I was like,
oh, great, come on.
So I kind of suffered the most at home. I kind of just really saw it out at home. I was just sick everywhere. And I had to pull over because I was just throwing up on the side of the road going
Is that something that you do when you feel pain anyway? Or was it just a labour thing? Wow.
No, and I wasn't sick with Summer at all. I think it was just the fact that I had literally left it too late, and I was trying to do so. I was like getting changed, and I was like walking about, and I was just like, Andy was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I know, I'm in so much pain, and the contractions were so intense that I think I just threw up. Everything just came out of my body. I had to change my outfit 4 times because my water just kept breaking all my clothes. And I was just like, oh gosh. But it was fine in the end, because literally Andy waited in the corridor. They said I was 8 centimetres. They shouted him, and then he came in straight away. I literally did not let go of his hand, because I was like, they are not getting you out of this room. I was like, you are staying here with me.
You are my safe place. Come on.
Yeah, exactly that.
How did it go from there, from being 8 centimetres?
Literally super. By the time I got in at 8 centimetres, an hour and a half later, he was out and done, and everything was fine. Again, got in the pool, and they were like, oh, we actually need you to get out the pool. I was like, oh, for God, I wanted the water birth so many times, and it was just not going to happen. So I was like, fine.
And how was that? How was meeting Alby?
Oh, just the best. It was one of those moments that once he came out, obviously they cut the umbilical cord, he went really purple, so they had to go and give him oxygen. He was fine, but they took him out the room, and I was like, that anxiety as a mum, that I was just like, he's only just come out and you've taken him out the room. And I was like, we both had this moment of just like, where are you going with him? Like, it was kind of like we were so desperate. And then literally 30 seconds later, she came back in with him. He only needed that little, he just wouldn't take that first breath. And then once he took that first breath, he was fine. But he came out and he was clearly holding his breath, which is why he went purple. And as soon as they gave him that kind of tiny bit of oxygen, he was then fine. So it was just that it must have been 30 seconds to a minute. It wasn't long at all. And then it was like, okay. And then it was just like, okay, he's here and everything else. He did have really bad tongue tie. So breastfeeding was just painful in every sense of the word, trying to get him enough, painful for me. It was just awful. So
I always feel like that's a really interesting area to be able to compare. Like, I know we shouldn't compare our kids, but being able to compare what has worked with one and then see actually something's going on, which is why this isn't working.
Yeah, it was. And I didn't even think about it. It was kind of like them that told us, oh, yeah, he's got really bad tongue tie. So you need to get it, I don't know what the word is, like cut, laser, whatever the thing is. So that kind of took about day 7, I think he got that done. So it was like quite a good chunk of time where I was just like in so much agony. I was just like, I'm in so much pain.
How did you work Summer meeting Alby?
So Summer was with her dad, and it was one of those we were like, right, we're going to come round and pick Summer up because we wanted Summer with us. So we kind of went round, and Summer, we kind of said, get her to sit on the sofa, etc. And then we walked in. He was in like the little seat, and then we were like, oh, here's your little brother. And then we put him, and she was just amazing. And she was just blown away. It was just, she was honestly so in love. And then it was like, I can't actually get over how maternal Summer is as such a young child. Like, I have to tell Summer, you aren't his mum. Like, I constantly have to remind her, Summer, don't mother him. Summer, don't do that. Because she's like, firstly, it was like a own live doll. I want to feed him, change his nappy. Mummy, can I rock him? Can I do this? And it's so cute, so cute. But now it's like she tells him off, and I'm like, Summer, you're his sister. Just play. I'll do the telling off. You just have fun together, because she's carried on like a bit like that. But she's just so maternal, and she's just loved it.
I love the fact that first meeting happened in her dad's house.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It really says we are one. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is your family.
Yeah, and we are exactly that. It's kind of one of those that it's always just been really open and honest. We've always had our kids' best interest at heart, and that's why it works. Because so many people say to me, how do you work that dynamic, and how's this? And I'm like, because we all prioritise the children. They are fundamentally number one. And actually, you get over the other stuff. Like, we've both moved on. We're both really, really happy. Yeah. And actually, we have that, like, nothing happened with Harry. It was nothing that it was like, oh, anything devastating or controversial that happened. It's just, we weren't right for each other. So there's always that level there where we're like, we like each other. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's, again, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you continue the idea of whatever happens? Or did you like to grow your family? Or did you kind of go, actually, I think now's the time to start trying?
It was one of those that we were like, straight away, we'd love to have more children. And I think it really opened Andy's eyes up to that. Andy was just like, I want another child and all this sort of stuff. So I'm trying to think when we got... So Alby was born March 21. I'm trying to get my dates right now. So March 21. And then I had my first miscarriage the year after. So it was pretty much within a year where we got pregnant again. So obviously the first 6 months it was like, no, like, don't touch me.
Don't touch me. Don't come near me.
I'm tired. I'm ready.
Don't look at me. Yeah.
Yeah. It was the first 6 months was just absolutely no go. And then it was like, of course we would want another one. Yeah. Everything had calmed down. Okay, let's go for it. And then obviously within it was probably took just a bit less than a year to get pregnant. So 8-9 months then it took us to get pregnant.
And had you had any miscarriages before that one?
None at all. So no, it was the very first time. And we found out at our 12-week scan. So we went for The scan, I kind of didn't know, had no symptoms at all, absolutely nothing. And it was one of those that was a complete surprise. I was probably way too laid back. I
Right.
think it was one of those in hindsight. Like we were in the waiting room waiting for the 12-week scan and we were laughing and joking. It was just kind of like we were so
Also, you'd had 2 pregnancies where you hadn't experienced anything like that.
nothing and literally nothing within those pregnancies.
So it wouldn't, thankfully, it wouldn't be in your head that was,
No.
that could be a possibility.
It didn't even enter the realm of possibility because I had super low risk pregnancies as well, to the point where they were trying to push home births because I was such low risk. Like there was no family history, no nothing, no absolute nothing. So that's why it just didn't enter our heads. And I didn't have any symptoms. I felt exactly the same as the other pregnancies, as in like your boobs and your sore and everything else. So I was like, okay, fine. I feel exactly the same as all the others. So that's why it was so shocking. That poor woman that has to tell you, I really feel that is just like, obviously it's the best news when you go in and the child's healthy, but it's so horrible for that poor lady.
And by this point, Andy's out. COVID's gone, so Andy's with you. for
Andy
this
was with
appointment.
me. Yeah, Andy was with me. And straight away, they obviously said, I'm really sorry, etc. They then took us into this room and it was kind of like, oh, okay, everything's then happening at once. And you've got to come back in the next morning for emergency surgery. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I genuinely hadn't even thought about what happens when you have a miscarriage. It was kind of one of those that I just genuinely didn't even think to myself, I'd have to have emergency surgery. It never even entered my brain. So it literally just spiraled from there. And then I got sepsis and it was just horrific. It was just like literally the worst, like 10 days of my life where I was just like, what's just happened?
Yeah.
It was mad.
Absolutely. And not, such a difference from where you thought you were going to be
I know.
10 days prior.
Literally, I couldn't believe it. Like, not only was the whole trying to process the miscarriage and everything else, but it took from, I had the emergency surgery on the Wednesday and I came out of hospital and then it was that Saturday morning that I was just like, I feel horrific. And I think everyone was just like, it's because you've been through something horrible, Beck.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't feel right. I couldn't communicate why I felt so horrific. I was like, I fainted on the bathroom floor. I couldn't even stand. Like, I couldn't even stand up. And everyone was like, okay, maybe we should phone a hospital. Maybe it's not right. And I was like, it's not right. I'm like, I know my body. This isn't just because I'm devastated. I literally can't, I can't even open my eyes. I can't function. And then that's when obviously I went into hospital and they said, oh yeah, you've got sepsis and treated me, etc. So I was in hospital for 3 or 4 days, but it was just a mad time.
And so much to get your head around once you're back out.
Oh, yeah, loads. I mean, I think I took 3 weeks off work afterwards because not only physically, but mentally, I just could not digest everything that had just happened.
Yeah.
Luckily, we hadn't told Summer.
Right.
And I'm glad we didn't with that one. I think it was just at that time, it would have been too much for her. Like, she was going to be 7 and I'm just like, I just really struggled to explain to her everything that was going on and I didn't want to scare her. She's a very emotional child, bless her. She's really sensitive and she hates it even if I go into hospital. She's like, why are you going into hospital? She worries. And so I didn't want to put that on her as well. So we were just like, no, mummy's just not very well. So she went with my mum and dad. So they were very good at protecting her from that, which I was glad about.
It must have been really difficult to go from that, especially with sepsis as well. And then the outcome of that, if people would kind of just go, oh, it's just grief, Becky, it will ease off. And actually, we all know that with sepsis, time is such a massive thing.
Yeah, huge.
To go from that to kind of going in the mindset of we're ready to try again.
Yeah.
How did you get there?
I think it was just one of those that we were like, we so want more kids that it was just like it never even crossed our mind to not try again.
Yeah.
I think we were both like, okay, this, like, I didn't know some of the stats around miscarriage until, and even them, they say these like, oh, it happens in 1 in 5 or whatever, but actually that's only of the ones that they know about.
Yeah. And it's only when you start talking to people that
Oh.
everyone's like, oh, I've had,
It was unbelievable. Like, some of my closest friends were messaging me after that miscarriage and being like, oh, we've had one. I'm like, I never knew.
Yeah.
And so many people do it in private, and it's only them and their partner that ever know about it, and that's absolutely fine. Of course it is. You have to get over it and grieve in your own way. Medically, it was, I had to wait a couple of months just to get some results back and just to make sure that everything was okay, because I was still showing that I was pregnant for like 2 months after my miscarriage on pregnancy tests. So it was kind of like, it took a long time for my body to kind of
realize that it wasn't.
And kind of get over everything. I don't know whether that was the I don't know. I'm nothing medical. So I don't know that side of things. But that took a while, and then we were like, right, okay, let's try again. We definitely want another child, but I was just so anxious. It was just kind of like, okay, is everything okay? Like, I've got to just rest, make sure that just everything, I was doing everything right, literally everything by the book, not eating this, doing this, and make sure I'm eating that, and being healthy, and all this sort of stuff, trying to just make sure that everything I could control, I could. And I'm not a massive drinker, I don't smoke or anything anyway, but I was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to try and do everything I can. So when we went for our 12-week scan, it was that massive relief of, oh, everything's fine. It was like, oh my God. It was like just music to our ears. They were like, everything looks normal. Your placenta looks, everything was normal. I was great. We then had a private one around 15 weeks. And then that's when we were like, okay, we can announce
enjoying it.
Yeah, let's announce our pregnancy. Let's do it. Because as well, I had a bump. Like, it was one of those that I was like, I can't keep hiding this. So it was one of those at 15 weeks we announced, and it was just exciting. We had told the kids, oh, Summer was so excited. She would kiss my tummy every day. She would have to say goodnight and all this sort of stuff. I had my midwife appointment at 17 weeks. Again, heartbeat, all fine.
Had you found out the gender?
At 18 weeks we did. So at 18 weeks we booked in a private scan because we wanted all the videos and we wanted to get like the confetti thing and do all of that. And we found out it was a girl. Again, all fine, absolutely. And then it was the day of our 20-week scan. I remember saying to my friend, I was like, I'm just really anxious. And he was like, oh, how come? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know why I'm anxious. I've just got this gut-wrenching feeling. And there was nothing to place that on. Yeah. Nothing at all. I had no symptoms, no nothing. But I was like, I've just got this horrible feeling. And I don't know why I had it. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, forget it. I'm not good. It's just nothing. Let's just go to the scan and it'll be fine. And it was that horrid moment when you're in the scan and Andy was sat next to me and they put the probe on, I don't know what to call it, and Andy could see the screen, I couldn't, and Andy could straight away, I could see his face, and I was like, he's looking a bit concerned here, and I was like, maybe he just doesn't know what he's looking at, and he's just and whatever. I looked at the woman's face, and then she was like, I'm just going to get I can't remember I'm just going to get my manager, or I can't remember the term that she called it. And then I was like, something's not right, is it? And he was like, I don't think so. And I was like, okay. And we just held each other's hands and was just deadly silent until she came back in. She came back in and then she was like, I'm really, really sorry. There's no heartbeat. I'm going to get really upset.
It's all right.
And it's just one of those that we were like, oh, like, now what? And then they just put you in this room. And it's like, then they come and tell you all this stuff that you have to take this tablet, you've got to give birth. And I was like, oh, I think last time I had surgery, I just thought, oh, that'll be the same. And you don't think about what goes on. And to have to give birth, I thought that's so cruel. And it was just horrible. It was a horrible 3 days. It was just, I felt like I was trapped in like a nightmare that I couldn't comprehend. I couldn't understand. I couldn't get my head around it. You had to wait once this tablet and all this, and induced labour and all this, and it was just horrid. That's the only way to describe it.
And it's not like you're going into labour in like you had before, where there's
Happiness.
happiness at the end of it. You know you're going into labour and there's absolute heartache throughout and at the end there.
Absolutely. And it was kind of one of those, I was like, oh, we had an amazing bereavement midwife. She was like, we felt like she was our angel. She was just so wonderful. And she was so brilliant. And because I wanted to expect, like, what does the baby look like? I don't know. I'd never seen that before. And she prepared us so beautifully. And she was just like, nothing's pressure. She was like, because Andy straight away was like, I want to see her.
Yeah.
I want to hold her. Whereas I was like, I just didn't know. I didn't have a strong gut feeling whether I wanted to hold her or not.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I do, then would I be more upset and more attached, and that's then what I'm going to think about, or do I? And I'm going to, and she just was like, just go with how you feel. Like, just let's process every step. You don't have to decide now. And everything just took that time. And it was just, I didn't expect it to be as painful as I did, by the way. It was exceptionally painful physically. I thought because the baby was smaller, it won't be as painful. That's a myth. So that was awful in that aspect. But the hospital were brilliant. They're so sensitive around everything. And we did hold her. We had quite a lot of time with her. And because it just felt right. I was just like, I did. And they put a little hat on her and a little blanket.
She's your baby.
Yeah. And it was just like she was asleep. It was the most painful, horrible thing to ever happen. But it was done in a really sensitive, beautiful way, which I know some people are not lucky enough for. So I'm grateful for that support that was there and kind of everything in the worst of times. And I said to Andy at the time, because you get this suite where it's a double bed. And I was like, it shows how much it happens because this exists.
Yeah.
And I was like, there is somebody that this is happening to absolutely everywhere. And it's just, you just don't even think about it when you've got kids. And you just, mad.
Had you, from that initial scan, had you gone home at all before delivering?
Yeah. So they gave me, again, I still don't really know what that tablet was for. They just kind of shove this tablet at you and say, you've got to take this and then you've got to come back on Friday. So this was on the Wednesday. I had to go back in on the Friday. So that period at home was, I felt lost. I was just like, what do I do? I had to tell Summer, like Alby was 2. He didn't really get it, but I was like, how do I tell Summer? Like, I genuinely found that really, really difficult. So we waited until after to tell Summer because I was like, we need to understand it ourselves because we still didn't. So we told Summer once we came out of hospital after the birth with her. And I'm so glad we did because I bought this beautiful book called The Invisible String. It's a beautiful book. We read loads of information, kind of really tried to ask Olivia, our bereavement midwife, what things do other parents say to their children, etc. And really took on board loads of advice and tried to do it in the most pleasant way possible. But she was just, she was heartbroken, bless her.
And there's just no nice way or easy way.
No. Yeah, it was just devastating for her, and Alby, bless him, just goes, Mama, is there no baby in your tummy now? And just he's 2 and he was just so, bless him, he was just like, Harper's my sister, and he still says that. He goes, if we mention Harper as in even just the name Harper from another child, he goes, Harper, my sister. And I'm like, yes, mate. Was
it some comfort to know that you'd had that time with her, with Harper, to hold her, to dress her, to have that closeness with her?
Absolutely. I think as horrible as it was, I needed to give birth before telling Summer.
Yeah.
Because it was medically, I had so much anxiety about it as well. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I kept thinking stupidly in my head, maybe they've got it wrong. Like, I knew they hadn't. But you kind of just constantly doubting everything. So I think I just needed that before then. Luckily, Summer was still at school.
Yeah.
And she didn't see me absolutely just like this in the build up to the birth, because she was at school, and then it was kind of like Andy took her out after school to give me a bit of time. So it was just kind of, and then my mum and dad came up and had the kids. So it was just kind of like, okay, they're fine. Like, they went and had a great time with Annie and Grandad. So they didn't think anything of it anyway.
Yeah.
So we kind of, not hid it, but it was kind of managed very well.
Yeah. That time after a loss, after Harper arriving, I mean, how did you move forward? Because obviously by that point, everyone knows that you're pregnant.
Yeah.
You know that you need that news out there, but at the same time, you've got to allow time for yourself. Like, that's another layer.
Yeah. And that was the thing. I didn't know what was the right thing to do. I really, really didn't want to announce it.
Yeah.
Because I was just, I couldn't understand it. I was just so heartbroken. And it was one of those that it was like, hold on, I've announced that we're pregnant, and now I can't just not have a bump.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just one of those, okay, how do we go about this? How do I navigate this? Obviously, we wanted family and friends and everything to know way before I announced anything. And obviously wanted to take that time with Summer, allow her to ask any questions and really not understand it, because she was never going to understand. I mean, I don't understand it, let alone at the time an 8-year-old. So it was just one of those that we just was like, okay, let's give it a bit of time, and then we'll announce what's happened and stuff like that. So it was just trying to navigate that whole period. I felt bizarre because I looked pregnant. So that's been your body, you change so much, because from having 2 kids, from winning Olympic medals, I've always been in awe of the human body. I've always been one of those people that I'm like, oh my, what the human body can do is insane. And I've always been so like, I've never loved my body in that sense of how it looks, but I've always been like, wow,
What it can do.
And then I was in this period where I'm like, I hated my body because it couldn't protect my children.
Yeah.
And I just mentally struggled because I hated myself. I felt like I was responsible.
I think that guilt's really common. Do you know what I mean? I feel like that feeling of having your body's failed you.
Yeah. There was no nothing that they could see as to why she had passed.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, we only had the postmortem in May because it just takes so long to get and then, again, there was nothing they could see. So I knew it was something that my body couldn't do. Like, it wasn't anything from Andy. It wasn't, and I know I didn't do anything. Like, I hadn't been in a car accident, or I haven't done exercise. I hadn't lifted weights or done something I shouldn't. But it was just one of those that I was like, I hate my body because it can't keep her alive.
Has the postmortem brought back a grief in that way, that sense of there not being an answer?
Again, we had a brilliant counsellor from Petals, and
you've both had that together, haven't you?
We've had counselling together, yeah. And everybody that we spoke to, whether it was our bereavement midwife or my wife, whether it was our counsellor, everybody had said, it's really rare that you find answers. Don't expect to find answers because you're going to be disappointed. Yeah. So I naturally, in my head, I knew I wouldn't find out anything from the postmortem. I knew that already. They had prepared me for that. Everybody expected that. So when we went to the postmortem, we were in there for 10 minutes. That was it. And it was literally like, we can't see anything. There was no signs in the upper centre, nothing on Harper. She looked exactly the way she should be. everything was normal. Your test results are everything. So there was no reason. And I think it was just one of those that was hard to kind of not relive it, because we've not forgotten about it all, and it stays with us always. But it kind of felt quite disconnected from October to May to kind of that closure. For me, it was more a case of that was our last thing that was kind of like that bit of, not with Harper, but that kind of final piece that we were just waiting for.
Yeah.
And there was that glimmer of hope that I was like, maybe we might find out something else in case we want to get pregnant again. But I think it's just been one of those that we're not in a place to get pregnant now. Like, we've just not been.
That you've gone through so much.
Yeah.
So much. And I think time is an amazing thing for your body, for your mind, for your heart. You know that Harper is going to be a part of your life forever.
Oh, forever.
And I heard something, I read something in a book by Lucy Jones called Matrescence, that it literally says your baby's cells, part of your baby always lives in you.
Yeah.
Always. So a part of Harper is physically,
always.
Not just in your heart, but physically always with you.
Yeah. And to be honest, you can't be in our house without being surrounded by her as well.
Yeah.
Because we've got a cherry blossom outside that Andy's family bought us that was for Harper. We got her, the hospital do you handprints, and they're framed on our wall. We've got one of those certificates that they just released that kind of acknowledges. So that's framed on our wall. Literally, you can't be in our home without her being there. Obviously, we have her ashes as well, and I'm still not there on what to do with the ashes. Andy would like to, and I'm like, I don't want to rush it. Like, I don't know what, and I just want her with us for that time being. So we always know that she's in our family, no matter what. Even if Summer is obsessed with making these little journal books and everything at the minute, and she's writing away, and she made one the other day. It was my family. She always writes Harper. Every time without fail, she writes Harper. So she's always going to be in all of our lives, and that's never ever going to change. And it's just one of those that the counselling was absolutely brilliant at just kind of not us finding peace, because I wouldn't say that we're at peace with it, but just how to move forward and how that she has that presence. It was our counsellor, Karen, that really helped us acknowledge that and what part Harper's going to play in our lives forever and moving forward, and how we want to acknowledge that. So we found that really comforting.
And things like the birth certificate, really,
it's huge.
Yeah.
It is really, really huge. And it's kind of one of those that it's so different as well compared to the 12-week miscarriage to the 20. It's so different that it's kind of like, as much as I would love to acknowledge both, I utterly acknowledge both of them. But this one, I'm so glad we were able to do something with Harper, because we named her. We knew that it was a girl. It was completely different. And I'm like, I'm so glad we have those bits, because we don't have anything from the first miscarriage.
Yeah.
Nothing. And that makes me sad. But I'm just so glad that there is something the second time we went through it.
Another thing, I think, that when you go through a loss, you can't help but, when you get to certain dates, know that was your due date.
Oh, yeah. We've had all of that. Yeah, it was one of those that the 1st of March was kind of like just etched in our brains. And it's so close with Alby's. So Alby's the 4th of March. So we always thought, oh, they might end up with the same birthday anyway. But it's just one of those, it will always be marked. It will always, more so probably with her birth, when I gave birth the 20th of October, that date will always be etched in my mind as well. That date will always mean something to us as well.
Have you, through counselling, have you talked about how to navigate that date? Not as kind of like it, more just discussions of what we both want from it. Andy is kind of a little bit different. Like, we've both got to acknowledge stuff in our way and then together. So it's kind of important that we're always kind of with each other from a family aspect. That's important to both me and Andy. But both of us, we're quite like,
not private people, but it's kind of one of those that both of us process things in our different way.
Yeah.
And Andy's much more of it takes Andy a couple of days to process things. And it's kind of one of those, we both need to navigate it personally as well as together. And I think we both acknowledge that around that time we'll have to discuss, okay, what is that you want to do? What do you not want to do? And just kind of have that in the back of our minds every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Paris 24 is a massive, a massive thing to have whilst all this grief is going on.
Yeah,
it's
but
not
in a good way.
In a good way, and in a good way, and to have something that, that you can really get lost in, that is a part of your world prior to kids and a massive part of you as a human and as all of your, who you are.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it of course it is. And I think having anything that's exciting, I think that's what we've tried to keep there. Like, we love going on holidays. We love all that sort of stuff as a family. So we've tried to keep as much normality as possible.
And moments of joy, and allowing yourself to have those moments as well.
Oh, you absolutely have to. It's part and parcel of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, everybody goes through things in life, and you've got to be able to enjoy those good moments. And somebody told us after Harper, they were like, you can't say why me just when it's bad things.
Yeah.
You have to say why me with the happy things as well, and actually acknowledge that it works both ways. Having something like Paris this summer, again, it's amazing. It's fun. It's something that life keeps moving. Life keeps ticking even in those dark times, so why not enjoy it while we're here and get to really experience something that the next two Olympics after this, they're so far. One's in LA and one's in Brisbane, so this is the only opportunity where it's on our doorstep to really, really enjoy.
Yeah. Becky, if you could write a letter on motherhood,
Okay,
who would it be to, and what would you say?
It would actually be to my daughter. It would be to Summer, because she is so maternal that I know that she is going to make an absolutely beautiful mother one day if she so chooses. Obviously, it's completely her decision, but I know she will be. But also just that she has been through a lot. Like, I acknowledge my daughter's been through a lot, and it's one of those that I want her to know that everything I've done is for her. And for Alby now. And just, she is such a resilient, incredible, beautiful child, as is Alby. But it's just one of those that, she just amazes me every single day. And just with how she bounces back and how she understands things. And I don't think you realise until you're a parent about parental love. And I know that's mad, because you think, well, we've all got parents and we love our parents. And I'm like, no, it's different. Yeah. It is a different love that you have for your children. And that's sometimes probably difficult for your kids to understand, because they just think, oh, mum's having a go at me again, telling me this and what. And I'm like, no, I'm doing this to guide you, to shape you. So it'd definitely be to Summer, and just, I hope that she knows how much I love her.
Yeah. And we end the podcast with you completing 3 sentences.
Oh, okay.
The first one is, being a mum means.
Means you're tired. It means you're full of guilt, but it's the most incredible adventure that you'll ever go on, and it means the absolute world.
Since having children, I'm
totally surprised about how much it's changed me.
And I'm happy when
I am with my family. I've become such an introvert, and I just want to be with my kids.
Becky, thank you so much. Have fun in Paris.
Thank you.
Have the best time ever.
I'm sure I will.